You're listening to The Dating Den with dating and relationship badass and best-selling author Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important dating, sex, and relationship issues you want to know about. So if you're ready for true talk that's authentic and unfiltered, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
The Dating Den, episode 63 with Dolan Mayeta. The shame hack. What single women need to know about the hidden emotion that is sabotaging your love life. Ladies, it's the Dating Den. I'm super, super excited that we are here together in the den. I want you to know that I'm a voracious reader, and I realized that I haven't read a lot of fiction lately, and that's because I'm super obsessed with how we can work with our brain and neuroscience and our pasts and our childs, all that crap, right? But how we can actually create real tangible results in our lives. And right before the holidays, I read an amazing book called Shame Hack. So I called my team and I'm like, get this guy. This is like my version of saying get Oprah. I got Dolan Mayeta for you ladies. You don't even know who he is yet, but like he's your Oprah. He's amazing. So Dolan, welcome into the den.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Marni. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really just loving this because, you know, I think that there's so much stuff out in the world that tells you like, you know, what you can do to change your life, but so few resources actually really work with the logical brain to get at the emotional brain. And I think your strategies are brilliant. So what we're going to talk about today, ladies, is shame. And I think that, you know, when I was first kind of in my journey, I was like, shame, like I have no shame, like I'm not embarrassed. And then I really understood what that meant, where it lives in my body and how it was really holding me back from getting what I wanted. And I talk to women all the time and like, it's like shame is a dirty word or something, especially if everything looks good on the outside. And I know that's you because that's why you're here. And so Dolan wrote this book. He's the author of Shame Hack, 4 simple questions to help you resolve shame and feel understood. After plateauing in his own therapy, which I know you can all relate to, he wanted to understand why, this is just what I said, why intellectually he knew he was worthy, but despite all his efforts, he still didn't feel that way. And that is how he created Shame Hack. And it's a very simple, it really is a simple way to resolve that feeling of not being enough. And he believes that shame is not a life sentence. And he treats shame purely as like a feeling, not like a psychosocial cultural complex. And he focuses on how to change how you feel now and less about your story, which, let's admit it, ladies, while you hate your story, you're kind of addicted to your story. His approach is to discover your truth and heal the hole in your heart, while other folks may try more of a desensitization type approach. And his new book's coming out really soon at the beginning of the year. You'll be able to find it on Amazon. You can go to his website. It'll be in the show notes. But I'm going to put this on the must read for 2018. So Dolan, welcome.
Hi, Marni.
So
hello, ladies.
Let's talk about, like, I just want to like orient people to this. Like, how do you know, first of all, that you're in a therapy plateau? Like, what does that look like? And when people come to you, how do you know that they're sort of there?
Well, for me, my therapy plateau was, you know, I was doing a lot of this feelings, you're feeling your feelings type of stuff. And first of all, I didn't even know what that meant. Like, I had to figure that out until I learned how to just begin to feel my feelings. And as I was doing that, it was helping me because I was becoming, how do I say, like more comfortable just feeling my feelings. I wasn't so scared to feel sad. I wasn't so afraid to feel shame. So I would just feel my feelings, and that was beneficial. And I kept doing it and trying to get deeper to it because I had this idea that if I felt shame deep enough, all the way down to my core, I could finally get rid of it. And I kept trying, and it never happened. And I just got really frustrated with that. So I I needed to find something else because I was willing to feel my shame, but it wasn't going away. So that's kind of how I plateaued.
And was it like impacting? Because I think in the book you talk about like it was a relationship, right? Like the thing that where you like were like, wait a minute, this is like impacting my life.
Oh, yeah. As soon as I sort of became aware of how shame impacts my life, like if you're not feeling worthy enough, you don't even realize how many times you'll sort of write yourself off from all these opportunities, or don't even give yourself a chance to do better.
So let's back it up, because you got really good at feeling your feelings. I think for a lot of the ladies who are listening, and I'm laughing because like I talk to so many of them. They think they're feeling their feelings, but really what they're doing is they're master feeling avoiders. And I know in the book you talk about like all these really stealthy ways that smart, successful people avoid their feelings. So what are some of the habits that our ladies might be engaging in, or behaviors that are actually avoidance techniques?
I would say like rationalization. I was like a really good rationalizer. I was a pro. Like, I feel this way because of such and such. And this explains the why. And what I found with that answer was like, knowing why never really changed how I felt. So I'm like, this is not going to work for me. So another way is you just sort of distract yourself with getting really busy, and you're just busy all the time. So you can't feel your feelings because there's no time there.
Right. And especially when society sort of validates you for your busyness.
Oh, yeah. It's highly rewarded. I mean, if you're super busy and you achieve in your job, then, you should have it all. But
it's actually a strategy to avoid your shit. Okay. And then this one, this one I think really applies because a lot of the women that listen to the show are very smart and get flagged as being masculine. So you talk in your book about defensive behaviors. How is that actually a feeling avoiding behavior?
Oh, well, sometimes a defensive behavior like that, if you sort of become like maybe like domineering or commanding, then the other person doesn't have a chance to be honest with you and give you, good feedback and connect with you because you're controlling sort of the situation and the conversation. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, so when you're doing that, like, what happens? I mean, how do you avoid that when you're kind of putting up the guard or have your wall up?
Oh, well, it's best to become aware of what you're doing. If you just sort of hit the pause button, I have a mentor who always said that change begins with awareness. And if you just become aware that, hey, this is what I'm doing, I'm like getting on this person and I need to take a step back, and instead of following through with your defense, just like take a pause, take a breath, and you say like, what am I feeling? What's going on? What's driving this? Right.
Like, what am I avoiding? Because what's interesting is, that guard up, that needing to be right that you talk about, like it's often just this great big cover up, right, for all of the feelings that we don't want to look at. So it's not like someone will say like, well, that's just who I am. Like, that's my personality. But is it, Dolan? Like, really, when you have these behaviors, is it really your personality, or is it just what you're talking about, like defense?
I think it's just defense because, I don't really think that someone being like really aggressive is necessarily a personality, especially if they feel threatened, because feelings that might be painful are starting to percolate and bubble. And I can tell you, I've been guilty of this. Like before I knew how to resolve my feelings, I didn't want to feel them. So I would go to great extents not to feel them. So I don't blame anybody for trying to avoid painful feelings at all.
Well, right. And because for most of us in our past, like that avoidant actually behavior kept us going. And then we kind of make it one of our assets, right? So it serves us in so many ways. So let's be clear. So we talked about feeling avoidance. And before we get into shame, let's talk to the flip side of that. So on the other side of that, I have people who are listening who would tell me they feel their feelings. But what they're doing is a lot of that stuff you talk about in your book, what feeling is not. Like wallowing and like even crying, right? Like crying at the drop of a hat or downplaying or things like that. So what's that about? Why is that not feeling?
Well, in the book, I give several examples, like as you mentioned, wallowing, and I don't think wallowing is feeling, because wallowing is you're just sort of like rolling around in your feelings. You're not actually feeling them. You're not allowing them to come through your body. You're just and when you don't allow the feeling to come through your body, that's how you avoid it. So I use another example of like rationalizing or thinking. And that's when you're sort of like talking yourself, having these conversations in your mind about how you feel, but you're not really feeling them in your body. You're talking about how sad you are in your mind, but you're not crying. If you're crying, then you'd be feeling the sadness of the loss.
Okay, that's brilliant. This is one of those moments where you hit that little back 15 seconds button and you listen to that shit again. Because actually the way our brain works, like the way our brain is set up, is that when we are avoiding so many feelings and we're coping and rationalizing, our body actually gets used to it. And so we actually become desensitized and we get very good at talking about it. And yet we'd say we're deep and we'd say we're open and all of these things. But actually what Dolan just said is brilliant. You're not actually sitting in the feeling. So you're so smart. Okay, so let's talk about shame. So we talked about feelings. How do you define?
Okay, so I like to simplify things because I try to be a simple person. And for me, the way I define shame is as a feeling. I mean, it can be such a far more complicated thing, like the psychosocial, environmental, cultural thing. But really, for me, I deal with it as purely a feeling. And what that feels like is, in some capacity, you're not enough. You're not smart enough, not pretty enough, you're not successful enough, but somehow you're not measuring up. And then there are like other flavors of that too. So that might feel like you're unworthy. So you weren't worthy enough. Or at a deeper level, maybe you're not lovable. So all those things like unlovable, feeling unworthy, feel like you're the only one, all of that to me is just the way shame feels. And that's how I define it.
You know what my shame one is? My shame button? It's I'm not important. Someone, like I remember when I was dating and someone would say to me, like just in a text message, maybe I'd gone on like 2 or 3 dates, or maybe I was even just like chatting with them and they'd be like, oh my God, I've had such a busy week. I could like feel it in my body. Like my face would get hot and I would be like, oh, they're just like setting me up to reject me, like that I'm not important, that they're busy. Right. Like their busyness is saying that I'm not important. And I would feel it like literally like my heart would race faster. I felt like my head would get like almost like hot or flushed. So is that normal that when we have that shame feeling and we get activated that we do have a physical feeling that goes around it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody feels things differently. For some people, it might be more of like a downcast posture with the eyes going down and sort of, this like embarrassment, don't look at me, I want to hide kind of thing. And I've also had the sort of shame that's been very activating, like the hair on my head starts standing up and like the left side of my heart starts beating harder, which is kind of interesting. But yeah.
So what's interesting is that just like anger has like a behavior, a body sensation of it, or sadness has tears, or just this heaviness in your heart. There's a somatic experience that comes with shame, which I think is an important window to that feeling. If you're like, I don't have shame, I'm confident. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm mocking you. If you. I'm just mocking myself because I literally was like, shame. I didn't like nothing, Anyway. Okay. So let's talk about this. So then if we have shame and we know about it, we know about I'm not enough. We read the book. We have the t-shirt. How does shame though actually end up being a hurdle in our ability to connect with others if we don't move past awareness into like healing or resolution?
Oh, well, that's because, like, okay, so if you're shamed and deep, deep down, you feel, in this example, unlovable, like it's so painful, you're not going to go there. So as soon as that limits the depth of your connection, because if someone gets too close and starts evoking that, feeling of not being lovable, it's, you don't want to be in that situation. So maybe you start self-sabotaging like I did, or, you just self-destruct, or you start avoiding them. But as your shame gets elicited, then, you start putting up your defenses. Or what's the other one I was going to tell you? Excuse me. So if you have, here's how shame can also impact you. Say you feel unlovable at a deep level, like I have, but you're not really aware. Since you don't want to feel that, you want your partner or the other person to try and make you feel lovable. So you put this burden on them, which the poor person, they can't really even do. I mean, it's impossible for them to make you feel lovable, because that's something you need to do for yourself. You need to heal that hole so you become wholehearted and remove that shame from your body.
One of the things that you talk about, like this is so powerful in creating disconnection, is you talk about like people have like a shame bucket. Like it's often not just one of those. Is it really, do you find that people are like, those messages come in different flavors and it gets filled up, and then that's keeping you further away from your desire to connect and really have that heart-centered?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, as you go through, each situation that you encounter will elicit a different type of, you'll feel shame, but it might mean different things. Like for one instance, it might mean that you're ineffective, or you make your shame mean that you're a failure, or that, you can't get it together, or that you're broken, or you're the only one. And all those little meanings all go in your shame bucket.
Damn, that just sounds like awful. Like you're on a date and because here's the thing. People who listen to the show are like, I'm totally open. I go on dates. Everyone thinks I'm amazing. Right. But like what I hear you saying, and what I also know is like, they're on that date, but it's like they got the bucket. Right. Like they're carrying the bucket. It's invisible, but it's like lives in their body. It's on their heart. It's in the way that they view the other person, their responses. So the shame bucket just doesn't go away just because you think it's not there or nobody can see it.
Yeah. And it also, all these things in the shame bucket filter how you hear the other person's words.
Okay. Say more. That's like amazing.
So, it's all about the meaning you create. Like, say, you're supposed to hear back from somebody for a text, and you don't hear back from them. And then, instead of that, the text simply not coming. It means that, I'm unlovable, or that person's not interested in me, or I'm not successful enough, or I'm not this enough. Instead of, the text didn't happen. Maybe, their phone died, or they got pushed in the pool, or there could be other reasons, but it's just interesting, if you're really shame-based, like that's your go-to. Like,
right. So your bucket is so heavy with all these shame thoughts and beliefs that the filter through which you're viewing your life, including dating, right, is actually being impaired, right, by those very beliefs. Even if you think you're showing up fun and flirty, you're not possibly being received that way, or you're not interpreting things that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to add on a side note, like, shame is so powerful. And like one of these deep truths that often gets discovered is a simple one, but it's profound. It's just, I am safe. So if you don't even feel safe, how can you enjoy the date? Because if you're always on like high alert for some type of, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop or waiting for something bad to happen. You just can't relax into the moment and, appreciate this person or enjoy this person or even enjoy yourself because there's just too much of like a franticness inside.
Yeah, well, emotional safety is so key. And so if you're on, if the smoke alarm is always on and you have that hypervigilance, then you're not being authentic because again, all of those shame messages are like, it's like, I just imagine like, someone's on a date and there's nothing between you and the person across from you, except there's this like glass shield. And this transitions to my next question. You've got all your shame messages, right? Like alphabet soup. And then there's a dude who's sitting across from you who's also human and he's got his, and they're just kind of, commingling. Which is like, what? So let's talk about guys. I mean, I know this is an obvious question, but like do men have shame feelings? And like, what do you do when someone that you're dating has shame?
No, guys only have two feelings. They feel good and they feel fine. No.
Right. Or they feel like it's Matt Boggs says, what are you thinking about? And men say nothing and they actually mean it.
I like that.
Right.
So no, men feel shame. Of course they feel shame. I think guys tend to feel shame more about like how successful they are in life. That's a real way they feel judged. Like career advancement, where you are in life, money, athletic prowess, these kinds of things.
So here's what's interesting. You're going to love this story because you're a dude. So I've had a couple of clients in the last month or so who are having text communications, and because of a filter, right, or their own fear, right, and their own shame, their guard is up, right? So there's that defense thing that they're working to uncover. And what's interesting is in two cases, the guys have reached out and just said, I'm just unclear if you're like into me. Like, are you enjoying that I'm texting or am I annoying? Because I don't want to be that guy. Sure. Right? So it's almost like, when we're both operating from that fear and that shame, it's hard to have a connection of any type.
It really is. I mean, it's like you're just playing peekaboo all the time.
Yes.
You're just not like allowing the other person to see you because, if you have a lot of shame, you don't think there's anything good to be seen. So if, you want to attract this person, then they can't really know who you are because knowing who you are is like bad, but it's so not true.
It's so not true. Okay. So I know, the actual shame hack is simple but complex, right? I mean, it's not, it's brilliant in its simplicity, but so what is one piece of it, or how can someone start getting over feeling shame, Dolan?
To recognize it. Honestly, just become aware of it. Like when you feel unworthy, don't believe it. Just understand that what you are feeling is you feel shame. Mm-hmm. It's not true. That is the number one thing. Just recognize you feel shame. And then you just say, oh, I feel shame. And that's what makes shame so tricky because, if you feel sad, you start crying, you recognize that you're like, oh, I'm sad. And, you can make peace with that or whatever. But shame is so identifying in that, it's not that you feel bad, you are bad. Mm. So when you feel unworthy, it's not that you are unworthy, you somehow have a special unworthiness quality to you. That's ridiculous. But that's how shame feels. So just recognize that. And then you can begin to label oh, it's not that I'm unworthy. I feel it's what I do is I feel shame.
Oh, that's so brilliant. Okay. So you have this question. It's kind of part of the process, but I think I've never heard it really presented in this way. And you said that, we give meaning to shame. So one of the things I think that's really interesting about what you're asking when you're asking yourself a question is when shame comes up, you like look at it through this window of like, oh, I'm feeling shame because I'm supposed to learn something, or I'm supposed to remember something about myself, or there's like it's like a window instead of a door. What's that about, and why does it work?
So that is really about, so that's like trying to get to the truth of the matter. So let's see. So say you feel shame and you make it mean you're unlovable. And that's really, really painful. And the thing about that is, so shame for me and the way my shame hack works is it's kind of like it's on a pendulum, right? So you don't want the pendulum to swing towards unlovable. So you put all this effort to make yourself feel lovable. But if you allow that pendulum to swing, and it's not always pleasant, it can be kind of grueling and hurt, and that's okay. And then it'll swing to the end. And when it swings to the end, it'll swing back. So when it swings to the end, that's how you realize that's like the point where you go, oh my God, I am lovable. And that's how it switches. But your body or your brain or yourself, you just don't believe it. I mean, you can keep saying these things to yourself over and over and over again, but you have to be able to be willing to feel that, to prove to yourself that it's not true. And then that's how you arrive on the other side. So I think shame, when it elicits these feelings of whatever, unworthy, unlovable, they're really pointing you down to some deeper knowledge that you don't know about yourself. Like the truth is really, I belong, or the truth is really, I am acceptable, or the truth is that I am precious. And once you get this truth, what's really great is if you look back at your life, it'll make sense to you, because you'll see these moments in your life that if you had known you were precious or lovable, you would have made different decisions. You would have handled things differently. And in that way, just by acknowledging that you didn't know that truth about yourself, it kind of makes it okay.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the thing that I really want people to hear about this is this idea of this pendulum, right? Is that like to get to the truth, you have to go through it. And all of these things we talked about at the beginning of the show, like these avoidance strategies, sure, you're going to get through life, but you're not going to actually get to that healing part, to that truth that you're meant to know, if you continue to avoid. And that there are so many ways to get through that if you're willing to sit in it and do that process. So last question for you is, why do you think the shame hack works? Like, why is it different and why does it work?
Well, I think the shame hack works because, I'm just focusing on the feeling and the feeling right now. And in my book, I talk about just trying to work with things that are bothering you at the moment. Like, you can go back into your history, but that's like, could be like childhood stuff. When you're like 5 years old, you don't even necessarily remember that. But what will be interesting is if you feel shame now, like, you're not worthy or whatever, and you allow yourself to feel your feelings with the twist of shame hack, which what that does is you find the meaning in your suffering, because I consider shame to be suffering because it's so painful. You find the meaning in your suffering, and that suffering transforms that that meaning transforms the suffering and no longer becomes suffering. And that's not even my concept. That concept comes from Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And that's where I got that idea. So by being willing to suffer consciously, purposefully, and then understanding what that suffering is about and finding the meaning in it, that is what changes the nature of the suffering.
Yeah, because then you have freedom.
Yeah.
Which is like, by the way, Viktor Frankl, I mean, like, that's all about freedom, right? Is like having emotional freedom when you don't have physical freedom. And then that's how you create your transformation.
Yeah, for sure.
Dolan, you're brilliant. I have such an author crush on you right now.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's so great.
I'm blushing.
Oh, so good. I do that. I do that with men, even on the dating den. You come into the den, Dolan, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna praise you. Really honestly, ladies, check out the show notes, get the shame hack. It's so perfect for people who are so analytical, which thereby keeps them from their feelings. But Dolan makes it easy to get into the meat of it. And I really do think that this approach is revolutionary and it is profound. So Dolan, last words for somebody who is sitting in their fused, rationalized, wallowing self. What would you say to her?
I would say to her that, first of all, you're not alone. And that there is a straightforward path that you're very capable of obtaining and pursuing. It's all you really have to do is be willing to feel your feelings with a twist. And that along with, the book, there are ways to help you talk to your heart so it heals. So when you experience shame the second time around, it's different in that you're talking to your heart and you're healing it and it's getting those words that it needs to heal. Versus the first time you might have gone through shame where you just felt the shame and you just left, all by yourself to wallow in it and not know what to do. So there's a big difference coming through the second time.
I love this. You guys, we'll get Dolan back. We can talk about part 2. We can talk about it. But first of all, notice your feeling. Like if y'all can recognize shame in the feeling spectrum for the first time and start to ask those high quality questions and really transform it. Listen to this podcast again and again. Get the book. Dolan, I love you. I want to have you back on the show and thanks for being here. And in the meantime, ladies, do not forget, date with some dignity. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.